Druids are, in my opinion, the most broken, overpowered, and fun class in D&D 5th edition. This is controversial. Many would consider the classes like Wizard or Paladin to be the strongest. But however, take a look at this chart. Druid is the least played class. Many players have never taken the time to try out playing a Druid. Well, except me, I guess. I've played half a dozen Druids and I have a better understanding than most, according to the data, about how they are actually played. So, in this video, you're going to get a veteran Druid player's experience about the class through the first 5 levels. After this video, you'll have a better understanding about why Druids don't take any shit. Before we begin, let's talk about a Druid's role, or rather, the lack of one. As a Druid, you are a supporter, controller, healer, tank, and damage dealer all in one. Your power lies in being whatever the party needs at that moment. Depending on your subclass, you'll be better in certain roles, obviously. For instance, a Circle of Dreams Druid is a better healer, while a Circle of the Moon Druid is one of the best tanks in the game. As a Druid, the 2 most important ability scores are your Wisdom and your Constitution. Wisdom, of course, affects your spellcasting, and Constitution, your health and your concentration checks. Everyone knows the importance of Wisdom, but as I've played Druid, I can easily say that you do not need Wisdom to be your highest ability score. Depending on how you play Druid and what spells you want to take, Constitution can be your highest ability score, and you'll actually feel more powerful. On the screen and in the description, I've put a list of over 20 good to great spells that do not require a high Wisdom score to be effective. That means no saving throws or attack rolls where high Wisdom is needed. If you're playing a Circle of the Moon, Circle of the Shepherd, Spores, etc., then you can put everything into Constitution and leave Wisdom as your second highest ability score and be just fine. Of course, if you want to be slinging spells, really buff that Wisdom score, but otherwise you can be really flexible with your ability scores. And speaking of spellcasting, Druids get access to so many spells. One of their strengths is that they know every single one of their spells and can prepare any one of them at any time. But most Druids fail to capitalize on this strength. My biggest spellcasting tip is to create loadouts. Yeah, just like Call of Duty or Battlefield. Grab a Google document and write down the spells you want for combat, walking about town, stealth, etc. Then, at the end of a long rest, tell your DM that you are equipping X loadout. Or heck, your DM might prompt you and ask which loadout you're taking. It is a simple method to get more out of your spells. I encourage this same method for clerics, paladins, and wizards too. Your Wildshape is one of your biggest weapons as a Druid. It is one of the hardest things for new players to understand, so I'll try to summarize the rules. As an action, you can turn into a beast. So, a creature that is actually in the beast category of monsters. Dragons, purple worms, beholders, and the like do not count. A good rule of thumb is that a beast is any creature you could find on the planet Earth and in a D&D world. So deers, wolves, insects, whales, and all the like count as beasts. You retain all your skill and saving throw proficiencies as well as gaining the creatures that you turn into. So, if you are proficient in stealth and your beast normally isn't, it is instead proficient. This is very useful. Don't forget this proficiency carries over to your Wildshape form. Next, you gain the creature's hit points and put them into a separate hit point pool when you transform into that creature. Say you have 15 hit points and your beast is, say, a rat that has 3 hit points. If you in your rat form take 5 points of damage, your rat hit point pool takes 3 points of damage and you take the rest. As long as your rat hit point pool has more than 0 health, you stay as a rat. Essentially, a Wildshape gives temporary hit points, and when they run out, you go back to your regular form. Another very important point is that you retain the benefit of any features from your class, race, or other source, like a feat, and can use them if the new form is physically capable of doing so. So what does that mean? You could essentially use a Dragonborn's breath weapon, a rogue's sneak attack, or the sentinel feat, all while in your Wildshape. Most Druids don't understand that they can boost their Wildshape significantly with other features they have on their character sheets. But honestly, the biggest boost to your Wildshape comes from your imagination. Some animals have the coolest abilities that aren't listed on any stat block. For instance, squirrels don't take fall damage. They can fall from any height and be fine. Look it up. A cheetah's top speed is 75 miles per hour or 660 feet in 6 seconds or a round of combat. An axolotl can even regrow lost legs. What I'm trying to say is that you can weaponize the cool abilities that other animals have as a druid. Use your Wildshape creatively to solve problems. If the wizard wants to scry on someone, let's say, become a mosquito and go drink your target's blood, then come back and use the blood for the scrying ritual. Wildshape opens up a whole new world of problem-solving possibilities. A quick note about choosing your race. I think Druid is the least race-dependent class, especially after Tasha's and custom lineages. Being able to put your racial bonus anywhere really opens up the game, especially for a druid who can use their racial features in their Wildshape if they're physically able. Even if your DM won't let you use custom lineages and move around ability scores, I still firmly believe that any race works with a druid. Simply put a 15 into wisdom and a 14 into constitution with standard array, or vice versa, and you'll be fine no matter what bonuses you get. However, if you're looking for great druid races, here are my top 3 non-human or elf races. Half-orc. Relentless endurance is so useful as a druid, and savage attacks are always nice. Adding to your constitution doesn't hurt at all, and finally the theming just fits. Half-orcs, at least in Faerun, are in touch with nature. There's a lot of roleplay potential here along with mechanical benefits. I highly recommend playing a half-orc druid. Lizard folk. Constitution and wisdom fit perfectly for a druid. Plus, you gain a litany of racial features like cunning artisan, hungry jaws, hunter's lore, natural armor, hold breath, and more. Basically, you have great ability score improvements and a lot of racial features with lore that fits a druid. Lizard folk, I think, are made to be druids. Finally, the tabaxi. The one weakness of a tabaxi is their ability scores don't really align with the druid at all. If you move a 2 into wisdom and a 1 into constitution, however, you become dangerous. You have a natural climbing speed, proficiency in perception and stealth, as well as the ability to double your movement speed on a turn. Doubling your movement speed can make all the difference in a Wildshape form. Plus, you get an obvious connection to nature being a cat person. You might need to fend off your party calling you a furry, however, all your other benefits will probably be worth it. As a druid, you can wear medium armor and have a shield. My advice is to do both. A breastplate and a shield should give you at least an AC of 16, assuming you don't have a negative dexterity modifier. Over the course of a campaign, you can then work on getting additional defenses and bump that number up to 18 relatively easily. With all those defenses and a higher than average health pool, you should be more than protected. If you are wearing a breastplate and shield, I also highly recommend adding an ape to your Wildshape list. As you Wildshape, you can choose to keep your equipment on you if the beast can wear it. An ape can absolutely wear a breastplate and shield while holding a weapon. If you do this, your AC will be 18 since the ape has a +2 to dexterity. Additionally, the ape will have proficiency in your weaponry, so it can use a weapon. I personally recommend equipping your druid with a scimitar or a short sword. However, if you're using the ape, its fists and rock attacks actually do just as much damage as your regular weapons, so it's a toss-up. It's up to you. However, melee ape druid is just more temporary hit points if you're trying to get up close in combat and have a higher AC. Now, how do we make the most out of your druid in combat? In truth, 50% of playing a druid is critical thinking. It is understanding the battlefield, what is about to happen, and how to manipulate the situation to your advantage. Druid benefits significantly from strategic and thoughtful play. The mentality of rushing headfirst into a fight won't get you very far. That being said, here are 3 tips to instantly improve your druid in combat and make sure your druid never takes shit from anything or anyone. What is the midline? The midline is the space 15 to 20 feet back from the front line. Usually melee attacks happen between 5 to 10 feet in that distance. So, the midline is about one 5-foot block away from the front line. Now the front line changes battle to battle. It isn't always one straight line. Thus, to stay in the midline, we always need to be 15 feet away from the closest melee enemy. As druids, we stay in the middle line to provide support. We have healing, buffs, tanking capabilities, you name it. In the midline, you can rotate around the battlefield where you are most needed, but don't be too far away. I define the backline as 40 to 50 feet away from the front line. Essentially, the backline is farther than a normal 30-foot movement speed away from combat. Most enemies will not be able to make it to the backline. However, as a druid, you don't want to be back there. You are a last line of defense. With a higher AC and hit point total, you have to be a final barricade for the weaker 1d6 of 1d8 hit die classes such as bards, sorcerers, and wizards. As a druid, your focus should be on the enemy's front line and midline, whether that be dealing damage to them or shutting down their movement. We will discuss shutting down movement in greater detail when we actually start diving into the Druid's spells. However, the most important thing is that you're not focusing on the backline. You can attack backline enemies. Druids can do basically anything because they don't take shit from anybody, but that's not your role. You see, in 5th edition you have 2 groups of player characters that are mechanically designed to attack the backline. Those are your own backline characters, usually made up of magic blasters like wizards and sorcerers, and then your strikers. A striker is a character that has a high movement and high single target damage capability, usually with lower health. These are your rogues and your monks. They are getting into the backline and wreaking havoc. Usually they are more suited to attacking those squishy mages and glass cannon archers in the back. I'm not saying you have to stick to these roles in every combat, by the way. Some combats will not have an enemy front, mid, and back line, but what I am saying is that in my experience, this is how you maximize a druid's efficiency and power. You are the glue that holds the battlefield together. Speaking of being the glue, as a druid you have great healing potential. However, in 5th edition, it is very hard to out-heal damage. Additionally, a character is just as effective at 1 hit point as they are at maximum hit points. Therefore, it is wise to only heal a character once they're unconscious, or if you're absolutely sure you can save them from going down. Spells like Healing Spirit and Healing Word are your best friend as a druid. I wouldn't even recommend taking Cure Wounds. If it's after combat and many party members need healing, it's just better to take a short rest or take healing potions. Don't waste your precious spell slots on inefficient healing, it'll hurt you later. Look, I could talk a lot more about this subject, but this new Taking 20 video here covers a lot of what I would already say. Check out the video if you don't get the logic behind non-preventative healing. There are many more druid combat tips I could provide, but this video is getting a little long and we still haven't gotten to the meat of the video. Now we're going to run down the list of some of the best druid spells from spell levels Cantrip to 3rd level. I believe these are incredible spells that every druid should know how to use. We'll talk about why they're so good, how they combo, and some strategies for each spell. Guidance, up to a 20% buff on every roll. This is how you have to kind of think about it. If you're rolling a d20, each side is 5%. If you're adding guidance, which is 1d4, that's a potential extra 20% to any single ability check that you're making. This is great. It's unlimited, it's incredible for everyone. I highly recommend taking guidance for literally any class that can take it. I would actually say that for some parties, it's such a good cantrip that taking Magic Initiate just for guidance is worthwhile. Next up, Mold Earth. This is great for battlefield preparation and puzzle solving. You can bury things, manipulate a dungeon. With this spell, creativity is king and you can make some awesome things with Mold Earth. Highly recommended as a druid cantrip. Primal Savagery. This is great for a melee druid. Now, it used to be that Shillelagh was better than Primal Savagery. However, looking at it, I think Primal Savagery scales better than Shillelagh and makes the druid constantly dangerous at close range, since you don't need to have a club or something of that nature in order to cast the spell. With Primal Savagery, you always just have your acid claws or fangs. Plus, it's just great flavor, and lots of people have so much fun using Primal Savagery. Next up we have Produce Flame. It is the primary ranged attacking cantrip, I think, for a druid. Frostbite and Poison Spray, which a druid also has access to, require saves, which limits damage. You want to be making attack rolls, since those are going to be more consistent in the long term. And also, if you're looking at Poison Spray, sure, a d12 damage is nice, but Poison is also a heavily countered damage type in 5th edition. Just take Produce Flame. If you get into a situation where you just want to use cantrips at a distance, this is a great cantrip to use. I have never really had a player who hated taking Produce Flame. It's just good, solid, highly recommend. First level spells. Ah yes, Entangle. This is one of the druid's best spells, in my opinion. It locks down a lot of enemies with its 20-foot radius, and even if it fails, difficult terrain cuts their movement speed in half. A normal, regular enemy with a 30-foot movement speed will not be able to escape their Entangle even if they succeed on the strength save. Goodberry. Goodberry is a great spell. Your DM might nerf this early on because it can provide lots of easy, free healing. You can use a focus to get around the mistletoe requirement. All in all, just a really good spell, provides nice party healing, highly recommend. Healing Word. Controversy alert. I think this is the best healing spell in the game after Healing Spirit's nerf. You can just wait until a party member is down at 0 hit points, pick them back up at a range. It's a first level spell. It does everything you want with healing. Healing Word is just incredible. It's an incredible spell. I don't think any spell other than like Healing Spirit gets close. Just take Healing Word. Always have Healing Word prepared. It's just that good. I have never taken it off a Druid spell list once I prepared it. Literally never. Ice Knife. This is the best damaging spell for a Druid at first level. Well, the best except if you're a Circle of Stars Druid because they will get Guiding Bolt, but Ice Knife is great. You chuck it at an enemy, it's an attack roll, so you can do damage there, and it has a secondary exploding effect, so it also has AoE. Honestly, Ice Knife is great. Pick it up if you want to do some damage. It's great for crowd control in small doses. Awesome spell. Yes, Speak with Animals. Animals, you see a lot in D&D campaigns. I mean, you can see rats in a dungeon, flies, whatever. You can talk to animals, get great recon, it's great for roleplay. Speak with Animals is slept on, and I think that if you're a druid, pick it up. I mean, you are of the wild, why not speak to nature? Second level spell, Enhance Ability. It's great for high intensity situations where you really need to succeed on a check. Place it on a rogue or bard or anyone. Your party will love you for this spell. Heat Metal. It is literally unstoppable damage if someone is wearing armor or has a metal weapon. It is great. A great strategy is to cast Heat Metal on a target and then Wildshape, because you can still use the Heat Metal effect while you're in Wildshape. The spell does not go away. It's great for pretty much Moon Druids because you can Heat Metal, bonus action Wildshape, and then you are just locked in on that one target, especially if it's a boss. Flaming Sphere. It is great damage. It's also usable in Wildshape. It is a spell that has lots of utility since it can set things on fire fairly easily, such as buildings. Honestly, another great spell to take for a druid. Moonbeam. Great range damage and removes shape changers from the battlefield. It's helpful and consistent damage, and it's also useful in Wildshape, so that's a bonus. Yes, Spike Growth, an incredibly good spell. It's slept on so much. I don't know why every single druid and ranger does not take Spike Growth. What you have to do, cast it on where a creature is standing. Just cast it on where they're standing, and they have to move. They can't move without taking damage. Their movement speed is halved because it's difficult terrain. Casting Spike Growth on a target forces it to essentially take 8d4 piercing damage for it to escape, and they cannot escape Spike Growth with only 30 feet of movement. It can be used as a trap as well. It's just an incredibly good spell that is slept on, and you can essentially shut down an enemy or a group of enemies on the battlefield. I can't say enough good things about Spike Growth and how it is underutilized by all druids and rangers. Pass Without Trace. This is an incredible spell, S tier. Every druid should take it. It makes everyone in the party a rogue. A +10 to stealth checks is incredible. Just always take this. It is helpful for getting around combat encounters, keeping your party safe, infiltration missions. This is a party favorite spell, and really, if a druid has this and has it prepared, you give so much to classes like rogues and monks and things like that, and also protect classes like paladins and fighters that might have heavy armor where they have disadvantage. It really just keeps everyone safe. Healing Spirit. This is a TPK saver. It will save your party so many times. It is easily able to heal multiple people who are unconscious on the ground, or allow a creature like a party member to heal itself. It is very good value at a bonus action. Still allows you to have a cantrip cast. Dang, like even after it got nerfed, it is still incredible and usable in Wildshape. If you're a druid and you have access to second level spells, what the fuck are you doing not taking Healing Spirit and having it prepared? Druids take no shit. This is part of the reason why they take no shit, because they have Healing Spirit. Take Healing Spirit. It's so good. Third level spells. Alright, now I gotta talk to you about the most slept on spell in, yeah, pretty much all of D&D 5th edition, in my opinion. That spell is Plant Growth. This spell is incredible, just bar none. You have to use 20 feet of movement to go 5 feet. which is insane. That's crazy. It breaks combat, and that would be great even if you could not mold the area around you, because the spell says you can exclude one or more areas of any size within the spell's area from being affected. So essentially, you can create pathways for your party so they can go through and attack enemies that are stuck, bogged down in the overgrown plants. I mean, it's a 100-foot radius centered on a point that becomes thick and overgrown. You just point, and it's not concentration, and you have the entire battlefield locked down. This spell, paired with Druid's other options, is part of the reason why I think this class is so broken. Cast Plant Growth, and then add in Spike Growth, or Entangle, or Flaming Sphere to alight all the plants and vines that have overgrown. You can essentially make it so no one is moving. You can keep enemies locked in place, and your party can just pick them off from there. It trivializes so many encounters. Every druid should have this. It is perhaps more powerful than a wizard's fireball. I know that's super controversial, but as I've played a druid, I have broken encounter after encounter after encounter with plant growth, spike growth, entangle, things of that nature, because locking down a battlefield is something that very few classes can do. And I think that Druid does it the most effectively out of anything. It has the spell slots, it has the health, it has everything you need to be a force. And Plant Growth, as soon as you reach 5th level, is the engine. As soon as you reach 5th level, Druid is gone. It takes off. And look, that's not to say that Druid isn't even powerful before that. I think with all these other spells, you've seen that Druid comes online pretty much level 2. Respectfully, everyone who says that Druid takes a while to get going is absolutely wrong. They're just not playing Druid effectively. They're not playing Druid to its strengths. And Druid's strength is battlefield manipulation, support, and being just a Swiss Army knife for whatever the party needs. And if your Druid is doing that, maybe the players don't see the Druid doing 80 points of damage, but they are mitigating 200 points of damage with how they're manipulating this battlefield, because no one can hit the party, or no one can get the party down, or no one can go around you as you're just a black bear tanking all this damage. It's whatever you want. Alright, rant over, let's move on to the next spell, Tidal Wave. It's a great AoE spell, basically. You knock enemies prone, you are manipulating the battlefield, doing less damage than a fireball, but if all those enemies are prone, one, they're not going to be moving as far because their speed is halved. Again, moving, big deal for a druid, locks down the movement, but also doing a lot of damage in a line, able to hit a lot of enemies at once, and depending on how you formulate the line where the wave is going, you can pretty much protect other party members. It is great. And finally, the last spell of the day, Speak with Plants. Plants are the best scouts. They can see everything. You can ask a plant what's been going on around the area. It's literally insane potential. You can ask a blade of grass who's been walking here, a tree outside of a castle, if the enemies are inside. Talk to the moss on a dungeon wall. Maybe they've seen monsters come into the dungeon and the moss can tell you, hey, I saw a creature that looked like this. Moss is kind of dumb. I mean, it's moss. But you can still get information from all these plants. Again, your dungeon master has to be willing to go there and willing to roleplay that. If you have a controversial and adversarial dungeon master, obviously it's going to make any class a lot harder to play. But I mean, it affects the druid the same as any other class. If you have an adversarial DM and you're a rogue trying to sneak everywhere and you keep being found, it's the exact same thing as a druid casting Speak with Plants and getting no information. You have to have a dungeon master that is willing to work with you. I think that's just the baseline for any D&D game. So yes, while I have seen people in the comments say, Speak with Plants, whatever, like they never do anything. For other dungeon masters that actually want to facilitate fun and play, I mean, you're going with kind of the intent of the spell and how to use it, how it's written. Speak with Plants is a great spell. It's really, really good, and it provides roleplay opportunities with a flower. That's great. Like, there's no other game that allows you to do that. And in the future, if this video does well, we'll begin to talk about the higher levels of Druid and get more tips, because I've ran Druids to very high levels, and there are amazing high level Druid tips that I do want to give, but this video's long, and if you want to support this channel, go and look at this video if you're a Dungeon Master, and this video if you're a player. And thank you all for entering the dungeon.